But it's good to be with you this morning, and I hope you liked that sacred reading. And Jack, thank you for flashing that those Zen photos, because that reading got right to the point. The great way is not difficult for those not attached to preferences. And if you wish to know the truth, then hold no opinions for or against anything. Now, I really wonder, when that was written 1,500 years ago, was it easier to do that then? It might have been to not have any opinions about anything. Because today what we're seeing is this cancer culture develop that it's really occurred many times throughout history. In the 11th and 12th century, thousands of people were burned at the stake for heresy. And in the 17th and 18th century, that's when things shifted, and it became known as the time of reason, the age of enlightenment. And perhaps these things run in cycles, I don't know, but it's happened before. There's this ebb and flow of energy that over time takes positive energy, over time takes negative energy. But I know that right now, silencing diverse opinions is not going to bring love and respect that we really want in this world. So I'm being confident that we're entering a new era where greater minds, race consciousness is finally open to new thought. That's my goal for the new year. You know, I grew up in Ohio in a strict Ramona's from Ohio, in a strict Catholic family, but in my teens, I could not continue with that philosophy. After some 20-some years later, after a divorce, moving to Reading to take a new job, some friends I met invited me to the Reading Church of Religious Science, now Center for Spiritual Living. It was 1989 when I first walked into it was in a hotel room actually at the time. And I could feel the power of this teaching. I found myself crying uncontrollably because something told me I was home. And I suspect many of you have had a similar experience. You know, I have a real passion for studying and teaching the science of mind. And it's probably never stronger than it's been today, because I also have a prison ministry with prisoners who want to learn the science of mind. And I see time and time again that when we study it and practice it, our lives change for the better. My life changed for the best at our church when I finally met my husband and we took ministerial training together. So that makes for a very unique relationship. So far, I've taught over 90 classes in Science of Mind. And every time I do a new class and dig into the Science of Mind textbook, I swear, I find something I don't think I ever read before. Where did Holmes hide this information? I see a couple of heads shaking. Yes. Where did he hide it? And it never gets stale. And that's why I love January. As you know, in Centers for Spiritual Living, January is the time when Sunday talks take us back to basics. These are challenging times. And so I think it's important to ground ourselves in this philosophy, to get the training, get more training if you need it, to understand the fundamentals of this teaching. It's a field of knowledge, and the field is the study of our mind. We have a very powerful mind. It's full of energy, emotions, thoughts, beliefs, and they're always flowing in our mind. But together, they kickstart the creative process, the creative energy. And that creative process attracts to us like experiences, energetic life experience. And it's a natural law, and it's always in operation. Well, when I was working on this, I got out the textbook that I have. It's the 50th edition of Science of Mind, an anniversary edition, and it was released in 1988. And Dr. William Hornaday wrote that there was a period of time in his life, he wrote it in the foreword, where he was desperately searching for answers. What is this life all about? He happened to attend a couple of Dr. Holmes' lectures, and he thought, I'll make an appointment with him and see what he can share with me. So when they met, Dr. Holmes was very, very kind. He wrote this in the foreword. Dr. Holmes was so kind. And actually, he didn't know at the time that Dr. Holmes' nickname was Happy. That was his nickname. And so as they sat and talked, after a discussion period, Holmes asked him, "What I really want to know are the results of your beliefs. Are you satisfied with the results? Are you satisfied with where you're going in life?" And Hornaday sat back and said, "I don't know." And Holmes said, "There's something in you that does know. So let's find it." You can feel the happiness. I just got a chill myself. So Holmes described the science of mind philosophy as the correlation of science, opinions of philosophy, revelations of religion, all combined with the wisdom of the ages, including the world's spiritual traditions. And it offers a universal key, which all of us can use anytime, anywhere, any place. Well, when Dr. Hornaday opened up the textbook, the first thing he saw was Dr. Holmes' dedication to the truth, which frees man from himself and sets him on a pathway of a new experience, which enables him to see through the mist to the eternal and changeless reality. Now, he was impressed by that. He said, that's a pretty bold, far-reaching promise for a book, for a philosophy. Then he read the essential premise of this philosophy is, and I'm sure you've heard this a million times, there is one life. That life is God's life. And that life is my life now. You may have heard that before. It is a power in the universe greater than we are. And because we're part of it, we can use it. Now, eventually Hornaday became one of Holmes' ministers, and he became a well-known writer about the science of mind. And he wrote a lot of the simple magazines that I've got a copy of a lot of them on my bookshelf. He was a passionate, probably as I am, about this philosophy. Well, in 2012, a new deluxe edition of the text was published, and it was printed with a leather cover, and the concordance is in the back. Now, I love that book, but I have my old Science of Mind book, the 50th edition, and pages are falling out, but I don't want to write in the new one because I've got all the important things underlined in my old one, and I don't want to disturb the new one. It's so precious. Well, guess who wrote the foreword in this deluxe edition? Jean Houston. And Jean, I think Reverend Ramona referenced in the first Sunday of the month. Jean said, "There's a practical emphasis in grounding ourselves in this philosophy by learning the power of trained thought." She wrote, "Instead of living a life of habitual patterns, we can renew our mind, but not just our minds, because what goes in our mind impacts our bodies and impacts our soul." She said, "Science of Mind gives us clear direction on how to develop a new matrix of how we use our mind. And it has resulting manifestations or results." And then she wrote, "It's how to activate and orchestrate our thoughts and emotions toward the higher purposes we're looking for to get the creative results we'd like to experience." So that's a challenge to you in the new year. How would you not want that? So here we are in January, and we're back to basics. And the first 4 sections of the introduction are the basics. And the rest of the book just supports those first 4 sections. And I know Ramona told you that, but it's important to realize when I send a Science of Mind text to a prisoner, I said, don't worry about how big this book is. Just read the first 4 sections, and then we'll talk about it. So section 1 was the thing itself, which is how Holmes described God. Now, he described God as the thing in 1926, and he meant to jar traditional beliefs at the time that God was a man in the sky, sitting on a throne, judging everyone, and waiting till we die to either condemn us to heaven or hell. And Holmes concluded that as he read all the great spiritual texts in the world, that there are natural laws operating through the spiritual universe that we can trust, and these natural laws operate 24/7 in, through, and around us. God is universal creative energy based on love. So a lot of people say, what do I tell people? What do we believe about God? I say it's infinite energy, infinite potentiality. And that really opens up a space in people's minds. So this universal mind has no limits. And every time we use our own mind, we're working through universal mind. So we use our mind to tap into that creative power that has no limits and operates through love and law, love and law. The New Thought adage is, to learn how to think is to learn how to live. Pretty basic. I truly believe that life, as expressed in that opening reading, thank you, Justin, is the most challenging thing in front of us as we walk the spiritual path in the new year. If you wish to know the truth, then hold no opinions for or against anything. Now, how hard was that these past couple months? Challenging, anybody? Yeah. To set up what you like against what you don't like is a disease of the mind. It's hard to see oneness in that moment. Then last Sunday, Reverend Ramona introduced section 2, the way it works. There are, it's going to be redundant here today, natural laws or principles that guide how this creative energy works. For instance, I'll give you some examples. The law of gravity. It's a natural force that causes things like this pen to fall on the floor when I drop it. And it keeps me from flying off into space when my favorite football team gets a touchdown. I'm glad for gravity because I'm a big football fan. And you've heard the equation E equals mc squared. E is energy, is equal to m, which is mass, which is your computer keyboard, a piece of paper, a book, mass, anything that's you can touch. Energy is equal to mass times the speed of light squared. Okay, that's complicated. But on the most basic level, it says energy and matter, energy and mass are interchangeable. They're different forms of the same thing. All mass has energy, little atoms running around. Bzzz. All mass has energy, and the energy's always working. The energy contained in our thoughts and beliefs are always working in the creative process. Now we have the law of cause and effect. It states that an action is always followed by a consequence. I drop my pen, gravity falls. But if I was to think badly of something like my cat might hiss at me. I mean, there are examples of cause and effect everywhere. There's a reason for everything that happens. For every effect, there is a cause, whether we know it or not. And it is summed up by Jesus and all the mystics of all time. It is done unto you as you believe. Based on the last couple of months, how much anger or condemnation do you want in your life? Do you really want those effects? Do you really want to plant that as cause and see the effects? Or would you like more loving kindness? Any hands? Any amens? More loving kindness. I agree. This thing, God, is working through us, and it can't work any other way. It sets a limit to what we experience, and the limit is our beliefs. And ignorance excuses no one from this law. So if we can conceive of a little good, we'll get a little good. I'm not a big Bible person growing up Catholic, but if you remember the story in Matthew 25, lines 14 to 30, it's about a man who's going to go on a long trip. So he gets his servants together and gives them his money to take care of while he's gone. He gives 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to another. Now, it was interesting. It said, when I read that, it said he entrusted the money to them in proportion to what he thought their abilities were. I thought, pretty smart guy. So the servant who received 5 bags of silver invested it in things, and he earned 5 more. The servant who had 2 bags of silver worked hard with it and earned 2 more. But the servant who was given one bag was really nervous, so he went in the backyard and buried it. So later, when the man came back, he gathered these servants and said, well, how'd you do? Kind of in that way. And the one who was given 5 said, here's my 5. And he said, good and faithful servant, I'm going to give you more responsibilities. And the one that was given 2 had 2 more. He said, good and faithful servant, more responsibility. And the one that had 1 bag of silver turned around and gave it back to the master. He said, I was just too afraid. And so the moral of the story is, to those who use what they're given, even more will be given. Religious science, to those who use their mind in a very creative, positive way, more positive things will be given. To those who do nothing with what they have or squander it, most of what they have will be taken away. So I relate this to section 2 in the science of mind, the way it works. We have this natural creative process operating, and when we use it well, we are amazed at what happens. And when we ignore it and let negativity take over us, we experience the effect. I often call it taking potluck. You're just going to let the universe bring to you what comes, and you don't always want all potato salad at a potluck. So don't take potluck. That's, my students finally get it when I say don't take potluck. Because if we're ignorant of these laws, it's no excuse, it's working anywhere. So here we are today, section 3, what it does. And I know this sounds redundant, but there's a purpose. I want you to remember it. We are surrounded by a universal intelligence that knows everything. It's unlimited in its potentiality for us. It's the essence of beauty, truth, wisdom, love that coexist in the mind of it, God. We exist in it and we may draw it, but it can only be done through our minds. So our minds are cause and our experiences are effects. Now, you've probably heard this a lot, but I'll give you some true examples from our center, and they're from our practitioners, actually. My all-time favorite is we had a practitioner who for several meetings said, I need a new car. My car is not reliable. It's just not reliable, and I can't afford a new car. Well, it wasn't long before she was driving down the highway, or driving down a street in town, and her car caught on fire. And she got out and watched it burn up. Well, her insurance company got her a new car. Cause and effect. Oh man, we all laughed about that. Luckily, she wasn't driving it well. I mean, driving it on the highway or something. Another practitioner kept saying, you know, my job is so stressful. She worked for the county. I just can't stand my job. I need a break. I just need a break. Well, it wasn't so long before she was going to a movie theater and tripped over one of those cement things in the parking lot and broke her shoulder and got her break. You know, our beliefs are cause. And when we have emotional fear of driving a car that's undependable, or an emotion of being overwhelmed on a job, that emotion's powerful. And so we experience the effects. Most recently, a member of our practitioner team asked the team to pray because she and her husband owned a little cabin up in the mountains, and there were a bunch of these cabins, and the fire was headed towards it. And we all did. We really focused on that cabin. And after the fire was all out, she and her husband went up to the cabin to see destruction. And when they got there, the 4 cabins near them were all destroyed, but their cabin was not touched by the fire. The fire walked right around it. Her husband was shocked. She said he was jumping up and down and running, going, it's a miracle, it's a miracle. She just smiled. I had a person in our congregation ask me about that. He said, that can't happen, that can't happen. He said, well, do you believe it's all energy? Do you really believe we're dealing with infinite potentiality in energy? Well, this is why practitioner training calls to some people. It's extremely powerful because a practitioner is trained to look at the effect in your life that you don't like You wouldn't go there if you loved it, but if you don't like it. And identify the cause. What is the belief that energetically created that effect? The fear of driving an unsafe car is very obvious. The overwhelming stress on a job, also obvious. So it takes a lot of training to learn how to do this, and to be licensed is quite an achievement, let alone becoming a minister. It requires 6 accredited classes just to get into practitioner training, and then 60 weeks of classes over 2 years, followed by a test and an oral panel. And I know people who have gotten to the oral panel and are not approved. They just didn't totally get the whole thing. So it's interesting. Most people do. But being a licensed practitioner brings me immense joy. Every time I meet someone and use these skills, it's like I'm walking on a cloud. I'm just fully energized. And then I'm better at recognizing why I need to check in my own mind, going, well, do you really want that? Do you really want that? So that was section 3. Next week is section 4, how to use it. And you're going to love that. Not from me, but from Ramona. But Holmes warned us, we can get too caught up in studying and not practicing. So he developed something called scientific prayer, spiritual mind treatment. And he believed that we only know as much as we can prove by actual demonstrations. You know, when you're fresh and new and you even demonstrate a parking space, it just jars your mind. Oh my God, this is real stuff. And then as you move up that ladder and give up parking spaces, you see the profound impact of it. For so many of my students, once they have a demonstration, it's like a light bulb turned on and they go, I get it, I get it. It works. And now you're not going to want to miss Ramona's talk next week when you really get into how to use it. But I want to share something about spiritual mind treatment, which is also called our form of affirmative prayer, that I'll bet you don't know. And afterwards, you can tell me if you already knew this. It was in the late 1940s, and Dr. William Parker was a friend of Dr. Holmes. And Dr. Parker was a professor of speech pathology at the University of Redlands. He heard about spiritual mind treatment from Holmes, and so he tried it, and he cured his own ulcers. So he went, aha, got it. So he and a coworker, Elaine St. John's, worked with the Department of Psychology at Redlands, and they began double-blind studies in 9-month increments. And that began in 1951 and continued for 10 years. They brought in cross sections of people in Redlands to do these things. So they wanted to measure the effectiveness of prayer for people that were having problems, people that were having troubles. So the participants were broken down into 3 groups. They met weekly for 9 months. One group only received psychotherapy. One group did daily Christian prayer, beseeching prayer, oh God, please. And the third group did daily spiritual mind treatment. And after it was all over, well, they published it in a book, and the book is Prayer Can Change Your Life. If you haven't read it, it's still available, probably through Abe Books, but I've got an old copy here. And it's really old, Prayer Can Change Your Life, but it tells all about these experiments they did, and they're fascinating. Here's a quote from an article at the end of the study. Over and over, we proved that whatever we had need of, whether it was harmony, forgiveness, courage, abundance, friendship, health, if we affirmed it and accepted it, it would become a part of our outward experience. And this is both the secret and the miracle. So now you know, scientifically proven, spiritual mind treatment works. So after next week's talk, you'll have a good sense of the basics, what God is, how God works, what God does, and how to use it. And you can use all that to improve your life wherever you want. So I encourage you not to let anything stop you from jumping into classes if you haven't taken Many science of mind classes, just jump into them in the new year. They're so powerful. You know, what's fascinating to me as I was looking at this is how many centuries we've gone by where these truths were known. I mean, you can go back to the ancient philosophers. They knew this. Maybe not how to articulate it as clearly as Holmes did, but you don't have to go back to the beginning of time, you know, the first page of the Bible. As a soul on an infinite journey, you can ground yourself every day with this teaching. You can let go of judgment, let go of sadness, embrace love, loving kindness. Let go of the past few weeks, the past few years. Let go about fear of COVID, any fear of the future. Ground yourself in the truth of this teaching. So I'd like to leave you with these words from one of my favorite books by Ram Dass, if you know Ram Dass. It's Polishing the Mirror, Polishing the Mirror. And he wrote, I honor the place in you where the entire universe resides. I honor the place in you of love, of light, of truth, of peace. I honor the place in you where, if you are in that place in you, and I'm in that place in me, there's only one of us. So let's close with a prayer. There is only one. There's only one thing going on here, and that is the love of God expressing in each one of us, in each thing happening in our country and the world. And so I know for myself and everyone present here and everyone who hears this on this thing we call the internet, wherever, that we each have power to bring greater peace into the world. It starts with us. It starts with everything we do, everything we think. And so I accept for you and myself to check in with God, the thing itself every day, to check in and see, am I expressing love? Is this an act of kindness? And knowing at the end of the day, I will feel it. I will feel it coming back at me in so many magical ways. And so the cycle of love and law goes on. I'm so grateful to know this. It's such an incredible power. And I'm grateful to help teach it, to help share it with anyone interested. And so I release this to the world knowing, thank you, God, you did a good job. You did a good job with the universe. I relax in peace and I relax in your love today. And so it is.